Welcome to the 2024 Sedona Ascension Retreat, Accelerating Consciousness. Presenting Mark Anthony.
And also, what's so great about Mark, he uses science as well as this psychic intuition to really talk about the nature of the soul. Because it's a science. There's a science to incarnation. And the world's discovering it because of people like Mark. He's Oxford educated, practiced law in Florida, Washington, and actually had practiced a case in front of the Supreme Court. He's known as a psychic explorer, but his background is in quantum physics, survival of consciousness, near-death experiences, history, archaeology, and theology. So he's also on the national worldwide television show. Do you know Mark? If you don't know him, you're in for a real treat. So he is a fantastic person who's able to talk from both sides, the mystical and the scientific, and we need these bridges. Let's give Mark a big hand.
How's everybody doing? Testing. Oh, there we go. Welcome everyone to the Sedona Ascension Retreat. I'm Mark Anthony, and this is the Science of Spirit Contact and Interdimensional Communication. Spirit contact is part of the human experience. Since the dawn of recorded history, there have been accounts of contact with the other side and contact with spirits. And these come in different ways. They can come through visitations, after-death communication. How many people here have had a dream where a deceased loved one has talked to them, and it feels different than a regular dream? Or you feel that your loved one, it may be looking at you in your peripheral vision, right? How many of you have experienced that? Sometimes this contact is through a medium like myself. Other times, the contact may occur in a near-death experience where you die temporarily, go into the light, and encounter deceased loved ones who have passed. It can also occur in deathbed visions and shared death experiences. But despite thousands of years of documentation, spirit contact has been dismissed as fantasy or feared as supernatural and paranormal. But the question remains, is spirit contact a question of faith or science? Based on my life as a psychic medium, my research working with afterlife and survival of consciousness scientists, the answer is both, because there's the common denominator of light. Every great faith describes the divine in terms of light, whether it's the Hindu tradition of the light of Vishnu, Brahma, and Krishna and Shiva as lighting the world, through Moses encountering the burning bush, through Buddha saying, this is the way to the light, through Jesus saying, my teachings are the light, Native American spirituality, Islam, the religions of the Pacific, of animistic Africa, and pre-Columbian South America, all the religions talk about the divine in terms of light. And the great Islamic scholar Rumi said, the lamps may be different, but the light is the same. This brings us to the 18th century science superstar of the Enlightenment, Sir Isaac Newton. Now, Newton was an interesting character, and while quarantined during the plague of 1665, and he was not a plague denier, he actually invented calculus. He developed the laws of optics and explored the laws of gravity. So, to the chagrin of every high school and college student, the plague of 1665 has inflicted on you calculus. Okay, but this brings us to the side effect of Newton's life, which is Newtonian reductionist materialism. And reductive means that physical matter is made of molecules, which in turn are made of atoms, and that materialism, the only thing that exists, can be proven to exist as matter, that everything is a mix of matter and energy operating according to physical laws. Reality is what is observable and quantifiable. The supernatural does not exist, neither does spirits, the afterlife, or God. Now this is the side effect. This is what happened in the wake of Newton's life. But then this brings me to what I call the Newton paradox. Because when we look at Sir Isaac Newton himself, he believed in God, but he did not believe in the existence of the soul or of an afterlife. That is a paradox. And for the guy who invented calculus and essentially physics, he spent more time studying the Bible, looking for encrypted and hidden mystical messages than he did studying science. But then Newton said, atheism is so senseless. When I look at the solar system, I see the Earth at the right distance from the sun to receive the proper amounts of heat and light. This did not happen by chance. Life as we know it depends on light. The light of the sun is converted into nutrients through the process of photosynthesis. We eat plants and we eat animals who eat plants. So every form of life and the sustenance of life on Earth starts with light. If it weren't for light, we'd just be Earth would be a frozen chunk of ice floating through space. We know from the laws of thermodynamics in physics that light is electromagnetic energy, and energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Then this brings us to Albert Einstein and the dawn of quantum physics. E equals mc squared. Look, it took Einstein an entire lifetime just to get that into a book. I'm giving you the kindergartner's understanding. Essentially, there's a relationship between matter, mass, energy, and that mass and energy are related and can be transferred from one to the other. And Einstein actually said that matter is energy, energy is light, we are all light beings. How many of you ever thought, maybe when you're in the bathroom and you're shaving or getting ready or whatever, that you caught a glimpse of a spirit in a mirror? How many people? Come on. Come on, this is the Sedona Ascension Retreat. No one's going to think you're nuts, all right? How many of you have ever felt that you saw a spirit in your peripheral vision, right? And then you turn and the spirit vanishes. How many? Come on. All right, see, lots of you. Have you ever tried to look at a comet directly, but you can't see it properly unless you observe it through your peripheral vision? The reason for all of this is due to the structure of the human eye. Inside of the retina, there are cones and rods, and cones are for daylight vision. And we have three different types of cones. They detect red, green, and blue light, and the cones are for daytime vision. They give you color, they give you details. But the rods, which are on the periphery of the retina, are able to detect light. And that's why when you see a spirit in your peripheral vision and you turn and you think the spirit vanishes, the spirit didn't. It's just that you're shifting from cones to rods, and you're going from seeing gray and shadows to details. And that's why throughout the centuries, ghosts have always been depicted as shadowy, transparent, gray and white, is because that's how people have perceived them. And astronomers have developed the technique known as averted vision. Averted vision is where you observe something like a comet with your peripheral vision. Why? Because that's nighttime vision. And you're using your rods instead of the cones in your eyes so that you're able to see the details. And here in Sedona, I know, I've been here during the blood moon, and it's really cool, and I know how you guys are, and you're going to go out and look at it. Now when you see a comet, try to observe it in your peripheral vision, and you'll get a much better image of the comet. The electromagnetic spectrum encompasses many different forms of energy: radio waves, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. See, in this area is the visible light spectrum. So, if you envision the EM spectrum as a yardstick, we can see roughly about a 1/4 inch of what's on there. And the thing is, that's because of the cones in our eyes, the red, blue, and green cones. So we're only able to physically perceive a very small fraction of the electromagnetic energy that's out there. However, a hummingbird has additional cones in its eyes, which enable the hummingbird to see ultraviolet light, which is invisible to the human eye. But there's a type of person known as a tetrachromat. And tetrachromats are capable of seeing, they have a 4th cone in their eye, a yellow-green cone, which allows them to see a whole part of the spectrum invisible to the quote-unquote normal eye. Ophthalmologists refer to this as an abnormal gene. I think of it as an enhancement. And only women are tetrachromats because you inherit it because of the 2 X chromosomes. And the thing about a tetrachromat is the normal eye can see 1 million colors, but a tetrachromat can see 100 million colors. So guys, the next time you're shopping with your lady and she says, "Does this color look good on me?" just say yes. Because the thing is, a lot of tetrachromats don't even know they're tetrachromats unless you're specifically tested for it. And I would say, without generalizing, and it is, International Women's Day, women are better at colors than guys are. We're like, it looks blue. No, what you say is, it looks great, it matches your skin tone perfectly. Everything is made of molecules, which in turn are made of atoms, which in turn are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. You have no idea how hard it was for me to get the electron to circle the protons and the neutrons, and those in turn are made of the smallest particle of electromagnetic energy, which is a quantum, and that's where we get the word quantum physics. So what that means is everything on the subatomic level is made of the same form of electromagnetic energy. That means this presentation mouse I'm holding, my body, the air we're breathing, the light we're seeing, the rings of Saturn and beyond are all on the subatomic level, the same form of electromagnetic energy, which is a quantum. And unfortunately, Sir Isaac Newton didn't have quantum physics. So with respect to our Newtonian reductionist materialist friends, he did not realize that everything was matter and energy, which includes light, that are composed of quanta that are particles of electromagnetic energy. So everything from the subatomic level on up vibrates. Everything, everybody in here, the seat's vibrating, the light we're seeing vibrating, you're vibrating, but everything vibrates at different frequencies. Neuroscience is the study of the human brain. And the brain is a carbon-12 and salt resonator floating in water. It has an electromagnetic field. It's only 2% of the body's weight, yet the brain consumes over 20% of the body's energy. The most energy-consuming organ is the heart, and we really want it to consume energy because it's a pump. But the brain, once again, only 2% of the body's weight, but uses such a huge amount of electrical energy. Traditional neuroscience claims that consciousness is the result of chemical reactions and electrical impulses. However, they're completely unable to explain how. So what are we? Think of your body as a car, okay? You didn't create the car, you have the car, you get in the car, you drive around, when the car's done, you get out of it and move on. And some people have really hot cars. And you look at that car and say, wow, I'd really like to hop on that car. And others of us, well, not so much. We are not these bodies. We are in these bodies. We are energy, which in the realm of science and psychology is referred as consciousness. In the realms of faith as a soul, a spirit. It's what makes us unique. It's our personality. It's pure energy. It pre-exists the body, comes into the body. When the car/body dies, it moves on. Consciousness is capable of perception beyond our 5 physical senses of sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. It is also capable of perception with other dimensions. Now the quantum physicists have chimed in. Professor Hans-Peter Dürr from the Max Planck Institute in Germany. Can you think of a more serious person than a German physicist? The brain is like a computer hard drive. When the hard drive dies, we do not lose this information, this consciousness. The body dies, but the spiritual quantum field continues. In this way, we are immortal. Meanwhile, across the English Channel, Sir Roger Penrose, consciousness derives from quantum vibrations with the brain's neurons. In the spiritual sense, consciousness has been here all along. Now, this is very encouraging because now, formerly Newtonian reductionist materialist physicists are now saying, well, wait a second. Quantum physics is proving the existence of life beyond the physical. And so when we look at physics, where energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another, and faith, which says the same thing, that the soul, the spirit, the who and what we are, comes into the body, lives on after the body dies, and based on years of research, plus thousands of readings I've conducted as a medium, I developed the term the electromagnetic soul, the EMS. And it's a 21st century term to describe what we really are, which is pure consciousness that is eternal electromagnetic energy. Now, well, thank you. And I'm very honored to say that a number of quantum physicists and afterlife research scientists are now using the electromagnetic soul theory and calling it the EMS. And of course, you know how it is whenever you put yourself out there, there's always the naysayers, and some people say, well, I don't like that. That sounds too clinical. However, my good colleague, my good friend and colleague, Dr. Gary Schwartz, of the University of Arizona says, well, let's look at this as another way, that the soul is the source of universal love. The brain has 5 different main frequencies: gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Gamma, that's like when you're on Final Jeopardy, you're doing the calculus that Newton invented, and you're just cranking your brain running at full throttle. Then there's beta. That's the activities for daily living, hopefully what pretty much everybody in here is. You can tie your shoes, balance your checkbook, and drive a car, hopefully. Alpha, I call alpha the groovy baby state. All right, now you're in Sedona, so you guys definitely know what that is. And alpha, no, but alpha is important because it's like when we begin to relax, it's the meditative state. Then there's theta. Theta is dreamful sleep. Delta, very little brainwave activity, but delta is important. That's where you heal, that's where you regenerate cells. But it is on the alpha-theta border, which is around 8 hertz, where psychic and mediumistic activity occur. That is why those of you who've had the dreams where a deceased loved one comes and talks to you, that's because that's happening around 8 hertz. For some reason, people like me and my fellow mediums, we can go from the beta to alpha theta state within seconds. Usually it takes hours in the dream state. This is some of the things I discuss in my book, The Afterlife Frequency. So why not just use technology like EEG or QEEG to, identify the EMS? Well, these are great diagnostic tools, but they may not be sensitive enough to identify the EMS, much less tune into the other side, what I call the afterlife frequency. But Professor Shelley Joy has said it is entirely feasible that there are frequencies so sensitive they're beyond our technology to detect. However, I can always remember this case because it happened on 2/22/22 in Tartu, Estonia. An 87-year-old man started having epileptic seizures, rushed to the hospital, an EEG, electroencephalogram, to measure his brainwave frequencies. That's standard protocol. However, while his brain was being monitored, he suddenly died. And this was the first time in history that somebody had died during an EEG. What happened shocked scientists worldwide. Just before his heart stopped working, all 5 brainwave frequencies, gamma, alpha, beta, theta, and delta, surged off the charts. Scientists didn't expect this. They figured things would just sort of fizzle out and go away. They're like, what's going on here? Then another scientist said the brain may be playing a last recall of events similar to the life review that is recorded during near-death experiences. So now what we're seeing is, at the time of death, a huge surge of electrical activity in the brain. So we have the afterlife frequency vibrating at a much higher frequency than our material world dimension, and then there are times, there's a zone in between, which I call the NDE zone. It's another one of my lectures. And this is where interdimensional communication occurs. Mediumship, visitations, near-death, shared-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, deathbed visions. This is in the zone between the two energetic systems, between the two dimensions, ergo the term interdimensional communication. So how does interdimensional communication occur? It's based on quantum entanglement. And quantum entanglement is when 2 subatomic particles are separated, even though scientists have said they're 1 billion miles apart. If you do something to one, the other one reacts immediately. Ergo, they're entangled despite the distance. Think of interdimensional communication as the two-way street I call frequency beacons. Think of everyone that you know, that you love, you're connected to by a 3-dimensional spider web. Let's take the spider out of it because, they're creepy. And when you're grieving somebody very heavily, you send a vibration along that web. Same thing. You ever been driving in your car and suddenly you feel compelled to turn on the radio? And there's that song that makes you think of your deceased loved one. Do you ever, all of a sudden you're smelling, God, that's my mother's perfume, but there's no source for it? These are all frequency beacons. And spirits can send them to us as well as we can send it to them. But it doesn't just apply to interdimensional communication. How many parents here suddenly felt something was going wrong with their child, and then they found out that was the truth? See, we are, once again, interconnected energetically. And frequency beacons are how we communicate with spirits. Well, this brings us to the physiology of spirit communication. 5,000 years ago, Hindus figured out that the 7 chakras align with the 7 endocrine glands in the body. Now, as a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, I can tell you that a lot of people in the criminal justice system spend way too much time focusing on the red chakra. I know this is a G-rated event, but come on, However, we have 2 endocrine glands that are very heavily involved with spirit communication. The pineal gland, which is the proverbial third eye chakra, and the solar plexus, which is just below the rib cage. And the pineal gland is the most studied and yet most mysterious gland in the body. It's between the size of a grain of rice and a lima bean. Within it has calcite and magnetite crystals. It controls the brain wave frequencies, including your reticular activating system. It controls your circadian rhythms, body temperature, sleep cycles, and light perception. There's that light again. How many people have ever experienced jet lag? It's because of the pineal gland, because the pineal gland is also tuned into the Earth's electromagnetic field, and when suddenly you jump in a carpeted tube and zoom to, 3 or 4 or 10 time zones away, your pineal gland hasn't had a chance to lock on to the Earth's electromagnetic field. So that's why that happens. Once again, EM energy, we're all connected to it and by it. What was the first radio? A piece of quartz crystal with copper wire running low levels of electricity through it. We have that in our head. It's a lot more sophisticated than that. This brings us now to the solar plexus, which is called solar plexus because it's a complex bundle of nerves that looks like the rays of the sun radiating from it. And there's a link between a gut feeling and intuitive knowledge. Now, every guy here, I'm sure you're connected to a woman who has women's intuition, right? Yes. Hello? Energy, the spirits are on the other side. You guys are here. All right. Well, women are better at this because they will acknowledge their feelings. All right, guys, we have to call it gut feeling. All right, because that's more Chris Pratt and Harrison Ford and Denzel, all right? And we have, gut feeling. My dad was a Navy SEAL, and he taught me you rely on your gut feeling. That's because we're feeling it. You see, the pineal gland in the brain is where you receive the data, the auditory, the visual messages, the data, but the emotional, the fear, the potential danger is where it's received by the solar plexus. And as you can see, the solar plexus is a collection and bundle of nerves that intertwines in a central location of the abdomen. Outside of the cerebral cortex in the brain is the most complex bundle of nerves in the body. And Dr. David Wingate and Dr. Michael Gershon of the University of London and Columbia Presbyterian are referring to it as the second brain. I mean, an octopus has 9 brains. It has one in its head and one for each arm. Other species have multiple brains, and it appears that we do too. Now, mediums, we're kind of like a cell phone. And here's what happens. A spirit, an electromagnetic soul, sends a wave of EM energy, and that wave of energy then goes into my brain and interfaces with my electromagnetic field and gets converted into recognizable concepts based on my memories, feelings, and cultural associations. But what about people who aren't necessarily mediums? The truth is, everyone is capable of having a psychic or mediumistic experience, even if you're not necessarily a medium. Look, we're just better at doing different things. Some people are better mathematicians. I mean, you can give me a guitar and I can bang around on it, but don't expect Eric Clapton or Slash, okay? I can swim, but I'm not going to win 20 gold medals in the Olympics. We're just simply good at doing different things. And it would be boring if we were all the same. Then we'd be like a school of fish, We'd be like reacting to everything the same, but we're not. We're diverse and we're unique for reasons beyond our immediate understanding. And in my book, The Afterlife Frequency, I teach people who are not necessarily mediums how to recognize, accept, feel, and trust messages from spirits, and I refer to that as the raft technique. And there's a great story, but time doesn't permit how that happened, but I tell it in the book. This brings us to near-death, shared-death experiences, and deathbed visions. An NDE is where somebody physically dies, their consciousness, their EMS, their electromagnetic soul separates from their body. It quantum leaps from our dimension to another. Oftentimes people describe going through a tunnel into a transcendent realm that has been referred to as the other side. Now, tales of these resurrections, people dying and then coming back to life, they're chronicled in the Bible. They're chronicled in Greek mythology and in Hindu scriptures throughout the Enlightenment. Okay, people didn't know what to call them until Dr. Raymond Moody developed the term near-death experience. But these have been going on for thousands of years. This brings us to a very fascinating, 2022 was a banner year for afterlife research. 567 people at 25 different hospitals in the US and UK the lucid dying study. Basically, when people went into cardiac arrest, they were given EEGs as CPR was being administered. And what happened is that in all subjects, those who died had that massive brainwave surge, just like the guy in Estonia did. 1 in 5 survivors reported a near-death experience, which wasn't a hallucination. And Dr. Sam Parnia, the head of the study, said that measuring the signs of lucid and heightened brain activity together with similar stories of near-death experiences suggests the human sense of self and consciousness may not stop at time of death. In other words, my electromagnetic soul theory is now receiving scientific validation and proof. That's why a lot of the afterlife scientists are endorsing it. But now we're finally at the point where we're starting to see this surge of activity, which ties into this. But on the flip side of the karmic coin, is there a non-spiritual, Newtonian, reductionist, materialist explanation for near-death experiences? Well, the going theory, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is a chemical secreted by the pineal gland when somebody's dying. DMT can be synthesized. People can have DMT experiences which induce a hallucinogenic state. A floating sensation feels like a spiritual experience. What it does not induce is traveling through a tunnel, entering a transcendent realm, and veridical perception. In other words, facts and data. Let me explain what I mean by that. Well, first, in 1780, Luigi Galvani found that by shocking dead frogs' legs, they would twitch. And he then developed the term bioelectricity, which said that the electricity generated within an organism by a muscle or a nerve. Well, the truth is, recreating something is not the authentic experience. Although it did give Mary Shelley a really cool idea for a book. And that's where she did get the idea from Galvani. She thought, well, maybe we can shock something back into life. But maybe not. Is a near-death experience caused by the surge of electricity in a dying brain? Brain physiology helps us understand the mechanism through which the brain processes the NDE, but it doesn't tell us the cause of an NDE. So, when you're reading, the nerve cells in your eyes send electrical signals to the occipital lobe in the rear of your brain. However, the electrical activity in your nerve cells did not create the words on the page, nor did the electrical activity merely enable you to see and understand the words. The brain's electrical processes might explain the mechanisms whereby people who have NDEs process the experience, but not how they recognize and interact with deceased people that they see during the NDE and accurately perceive things from an out-of-body visual perspective. Let me put this in easier terms. Veridical perception. There was a woman who died on an operating table, and her consciousness started floating above the operating room. And she saw the surgeon and everybody working, trying to resuscitate her. She said, as I passed the light fixture, I noticed there was dust on top of it. And she said, I really need to tell the nurse about this. This needs to be dusted. The next thing she knows, she's hovering above the hospital. And in the rain gutter and the corner of the roof of the hospital, she saw a blue sneaker stuck in the rain gutter. She was resuscitated. And when came out of this, she said, I saw this blue sneaker. And the surgeon said, get 2 people up on the roof right now. And exactly where she said it was, they found a blue sneaker. And I got to meet her, Kimberly Clark Sharp. She's with the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and it was a great honor to meet her. And she actually gave me a blue sneaker. It was really cool of her. So, afterlife frequency, our dimension, then there is overlap, which leads us to deathbed visions, shared death experiences, and which are multiple simultaneous NDEs. All right. Deathbed visions. This is where somebody's dying and they'll start seeing deceased loved ones, angels, religious figures. These two have been documented for thousands of years. One of the last golden girl to go, Betty White. She was married to the love of her life, Alan Ludden. He was a game show host. They were married from 63 to 81. She loved Alan so much. After he died, she never remarried. Every interview, she talked about Alan. Betty died on New Year's Eve 2021, just like a week or so shy of her 100th birthday. Before she died, her caretaker and actress Vicki Lawrence, who played Mama or Mama on Mama's Family, I watched it on TV Land. They said that Betty looked up, smiled, and said, "Alan," and died. Steve Jobs, his family said that just before he died, he kept saying, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." Then, George Floyd. I'm not trying to play politics or any social commentary, but as a near-death experience researcher, I watched the film of him dying several times, and I think this may be the most heavily documented and observed near-deathbed vision in history. He said, "Mama, I'm through." I researched his background, very close to his mother who predeceased him. And the look on his face, even though, everything was going on, it appeared he was recognizing her. A shared death experience, that's when people in close proximity, doctors, nurses, healthcare providers, family members, and friends, they'll see a transparent replica of the dying person leave the body. They'll describe a feeling of their own body rising to the light. They'll hear beautiful music. They will see apparitions of the dead person's deceased loved ones, a brilliant light filling the room at the time of death. Dr. Raymond Moody, this is part of his research. I've been at the bedside of a number of people who have died. I've seen all of this. And the really fascinating part is people who are not mediums were seeing it too. Why does this happen? Well, there's an overlap between a deathbed vision and shared death experiences, because people are seeing deceased loved ones, and then people in close proximity who are not mediums see them as well. Here we go. The afterlife frequency, that's the other dimension. We have an electromagnetic soul in transition. The brain's no longer, it's degrading. It's no longer able to contain the energy of the electromagnetic soul. People in close proximity, your electromagnetic souls start overlapping with the frequency of the EMS of the dying person. That's why you'll see spirits in the room. People say, "Oh my God, there's Aunt Dottie." I had somebody say that, and they started seeing the loved ones. And then, as the person transitions, that's where you may get that "I'm lifting up," where you'll see the surge of white light out of your body. None of this is hocus pocus or magic. This is all provable through science, and we're now proving it. Is communication with spirits possible through technology? Thomas Edison was working on the spirit phone. My friend and colleague, Dr. Gary Schwartz, is developing the soul phone. Pretty cool stuff. Love to tell you about it. Had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Can't. At least not yet. And then this brings me to the best friend I ever had, Billy. We met when we were 11 years old. We went through junior high, high school, college together. After college, he went to Asia to teach English to Japanese executives. I went to law school. This is us in Japan at Kinkakuji, the Golden Temple. He was my brother. I mean, I just love the guy. How do you find a friend like that in life? You're lucky if you get one. And he was an Irish Catholic. I'm an Italian Catholic. Except he was an atheist. And he'd say, "But I don't get that whole psychic thing you do." And so our entire lives, particularly when we're in Asia, because we travel throughout Asia, and I write about him in both Evidence of Eternity and the Afterlife Frequency, he said, "I don't believe in an afterlife because there's no technology to prove it." Well, this argument went on our entire lives. And it wasn't a shouting argument, it was an intellectual argument. And I remember he even asked me to perform his wedding ceremony. I was a notary public at the time, and he met this beautiful woman in Japan. And I will never forget that day. There I was, it was right in front of the ocean in Florida, and my best friend, and now my new best friend, his wife, his parents were there, my parents, all of our friends from high school, college, half of my fraternity brothers were there. Everybody I loved was there. It was one of those shining moments in life that you are so lucky to get. And then a few years later, Billy grappled so heavily with alcoholism and depression, he took his own life. Naturally, I was devastated, and I did my best, using my abilities as a medium and my understanding to move forward. And then a couple years after that, I was asked to speak at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. It was a paranormal convention there. I've written a lot about things that happened. And I had just finished speaking, and there was a huge convention hall, and I was signing copies of my first book, because it had just come out, Never Letting Go. And my manager, Rocky, she's here, there she is over there. Rocky is with me, she travels with me on all these tours. So I'm signing copies of my book, and she's walking around checking out all the cool paranormal investigation equipment. I mean, they had K2 meters, tri-field, spirit box, digital voice recorder, thermal infrared. And Rocky's walking by this one table, and there was a guy displaying the spirit box scanner. And she's walking by, and she hears, "Get Mark." And the investigator, the guy selling, his name is Chris, he goes, "Did that just say?" And then it goes, "Get Mark." And he goes, "Do you think he means you're Mark Anthony?" So I'm signing books, and all of a sudden I'm hearing Rocky and Chris go, "Mark, get over here!" So, I'm like, oh my God, so I run over there, and of course it's paranormal conventions, and now there's a whole bunch of people around. And I go walking up, and there's this thing, and all of a sudden it says, "Dude." And I looked at Rocky, and a tear was rolling out of her eyes. And before either of us could say anything, it said, "Love you, bro." It was his voice. The reason Rocky was crying, she knew Billy. She said, "Mark, that's Billy's voice." And the thing is, the very last thing he said to me in this world, he always called me dude because we grew up in the surfing culture of East Coast Florida. So dude. Last thing he says, "Dude, love you, bro." Last thing he ever said to me in this world. And then it dawned on me, the atheist, the one who told me there's no technology to prove an afterlife, taught me through the spirit box scanner, which was invented by Gary Galka, whom I had the honor to appear in an upcoming episode of a Discovery Channel TV show. Gary and I hit it off right away. And I want to thank everyone for showing up. This has been the science of spirit contact and interdimensional communication. From the cosmic to the subatomic, we are all connected to the light by the electromagnetic soul. And if you want to find out more, my book, The Afterlife Frequency, is at my table. I'll be happy to sign copies of it. I want to thank Suzanne Ross.
Stay tuned for the next presentation featuring the channelers Sean Swanson, Rob Gauthier, and Wendy Kennedy.